Gang, welcome to Men with Momentum. A little bit of a problem tonight in that the settings have changed on our Momentum page and I have no idea how to go live there anymore. So we're going to do live here and hope that everyone comes across. I'll get our man on now. Plenty bonds. There's plenty coming for you. So just hold tight. Hold tight. Big fella.
Yo, what's going, brother? How are you?
Mate, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm fantastic, brother. It's a little warm, but I'm okay.
I'm sweating bullets. It's really good though.
Yeah.
For those join us now, sorry about Momentum. Normally we'd be doing this on Momentum, but I jumped on there. Cannot work out how to do live change. Settings have changed, so we'll go from here. Mate, what I'll get you to do is give yourself a 1 minute summary for those that are tuning in now, and then we're going to rip into all the goodness.
Done deal, brother. And thank you very much for having me on. So, out there watching, I write directors, and we have a business called Men's Medicine. We're traveling doing men's work around Australia and New Zealand, doing men's workshops. Obviously, we're going to be diving into that a little bit later, but a little bit about my back story. I'm from a country town out west. I live in the Gold Coast currently at the moment. Before I got into men's work and helping men in the community, I used to had a construction business, and I kind of just transitioned to this space in the last couple of years. And man, that's a really brief description of me in a real nutshell, but I'm sure we'll break all that down and go into it as we go through this anyway.
Mate, absolutely. We'll start there straight away. Normally when someone has a strong passion, like you and I do, it stems from some kind of pain or some kind of significant moment in their lives that kind of transform and create the passion for them. What was it that got you into men's medicine, or what kind of was the draw card for you?
Yeah, no, definitely. There's actually two things for me. So one of the first ones was when I was quite young, or in my 20s all the way up to 25, I struggled with addiction at the time. I was smoking ice and dealing drugs and stuff like that, and it wasn't. And at the time, obviously, I didn't think I had an addiction, but as I grew older, I realised, if you can't go a couple of days without drugs, well, you have an addiction. So I had to, weed myself out of that. That was a very, dark and not so memorable time for me at that time. So I had to go through that, work that on myself, and I realised the effect that I had on my mental state. And I was just lucky and fortunate enough to have the right people around me at the time to be able to guide me through that. There was that. That was a real pivotal moment in wanted me to, really forced me to get out there and help people that were in my same situation, and just given poor advice as a young man and trying to grow up. So there was that. And then the second one was my uncle. I actually lost an uncle. So probably about 4 or 5 months into doing men's medicine, just after it started, I actually lost an uncle of mine. He lived out west and down to Charvel to suicide. And for me, it shook me up quite a bit because I had a lot of guilt and shame around at the start, because I was like, look, I work in this space, and I'm like, I couldn't even see that. And it really shine a light on how disconnected I was with some of my family members and things I wasn't paying attention to. So it potentially made me dive a lot deeper into the work and upskilling myself in as many areas as I could, so that I can hold space and be able to help family and my community as well. So I guess those are the two main things that really drove me into it as well. Obviously, I hit my lows like everyone does, but I always had a passion to help people. I think that obviously stemmed from my father as well. He was quite a giving man. And I always felt like I had enough, although probably didn't have a great deal, but I always felt we had enough. So I felt it was my own duty to be able to help people out as well. So that's kind of my two things that really pushed me into space.
Beautiful. And guys, those of you who are tuned in, if there's any reception problems, let me know. Mine should be good, but I obviously don't know what it looks like from your side of things. But if there's any noise or reception problems, just let us know as well, guys. I'm interested in the addiction part, and it's interesting. I mean, more. There's a lot of us that have social media addictions, and we almost classify different addictions as if there's good and there's bad addictions. But what was the advice that you got, and how did you come out the other side? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, it was tough, and I could have done it in such a better way. So, like for me, I was confused. I was very confused at that time. Like now that I look back at it, I had a lot of hate. I had a lot of guilt and shame around it. And I was really hiding behind the drugs and alcohol at the time. It caused a lot of things, relationships. I went through an abundance of failed relationships as well. But I guess the advice I got, like I'll tell you a story actually. It's probably, I've actually only told this story just once, how I actually got out of that scene. And it was on a, funny enough, it was on a weekend, it was on a Sunday morning, we were still up, partying, and my mate had a patio at the back, and it hadn't been finished, there's a building a patio, so I got up there and we ended up putting the roof on, me and another guy. Obviously, we'd still been awake, doing drugs and everything on the weekends. And the other guy worked in Gladstone, his name's James Deacon. And he obviously seen me, I could work. And I wasn't working at the time, I hadn't been working at all for a while. And he seen that I could work. So we were up there, obviously partying, kicking on. And yeah, he's just like, hey man, do you want a job? And I was like, oh, not really. And it kind of, from there, he asked me again a couple of weeks ago after that. And I was like, you know what, that's it, I have to get out of here. I hit it. It's just timing was perfect. I obviously hit an all-time low. I was like, look, something needs to change. So I was fortunate enough to have someone like himself, and he took me in and let me come stay at his house and his family. And I guess really took me away from that scene a lot. I'd moved town, had a couple of older people around me at the time that were like, look, yeah, everyone around me was either going to rehab, jail, and stuff like that. It just wasn't a really good scene. So yeah, it was. I guess I got a couple of really big wake up calls, really big wake up calls. Like I just hit some low lows. Hey, like I remember just like extreme paranoia. There's just like obviously anyone that smoked ice before understand, like you've been binging on it for a while. You get paranoid. You can't even like your relationships fall out. I had people that I owed money to. People hated me. I was friggin' ignoring people. I was running from everyone, running from all my problems. And yeah, it all had to come to a halt at some point in my life. And yeah, I was just fortunate enough to be put in a different scenario, and it changed me a lot. But yeah, going to Gladstone was probably the best thing for me. Yeah, that changed my life. Just got me, and I had a stage there where I didn't drink or do any drugs for about 6 months. And if I didn't do that, I definitely would be in a very different situation. And actually, sorry, I got to mention one person too. It was actually a woman helped. Samara, I'll give her a shout out. Actually, she was my partner at the time, and she was very strict on me. So I guess if I didn't have her around at the time, yeah, definitely I would have. Who knows what would have happened? So yeah, she was a big influence on me to help. She just didn't allow any of that around her. So I was forced to kind of change ways a little. That was a really pivotal and turning myself as well.
What's the struggle like coming off us? I've obviously never touched it, but I know enough about addictions to know how controlling they are for you, and whether it's ice, another substance, social media, whatever your addiction is. There's a lot of challenges when you really understand, what happens on a deep level for those in that addictive patterns. But what was that like coming off for you?
For me, the honest truth was the whole time, only until like a couple of years after I got off it, I never touched it. I fully accepted that I actually had an addiction. When you're on it, it's a lifestyle. It's just something you do. It's like making coffee. It was just a thing that we did, and never for 1 minute while I was doing it did I ever think that I had a problem with it at all. It was just one of those things where I'm like, oh, no, it's all good. It's just like having a cigarette, not smoke. But it was just but like on the outside of that, when I was coming off it, yeah, it was hard. And this is where I could have done it a lot better because I fully secluded myself. I knew I needed to dry myself out, and I isolated myself. I guess had an immense kind of impact on my mental stability. Not being able to see anyone, like I secluded myself so good. Obviously, it worked in the long run for a certain amount of time, but like it came at a cost. That time that I was like that was super hard for me, and yeah, it wasn't good. Like you have to really just change your environment. Hey, I always say like environment's everything. I just had to cut everyone off like that, and it wasn't if I didn't just try once and it was just like all willy nilly and it was good after one try. This was many failed attempts of trying to separate myself from people that were in that space and didn't want to make change. So I had a few attempts at it, but yeah, there was just a few times there where it kind of came to a point. And I was like, look, this has got to change now because we I can't keep going down this road at all. It's not healthy for me, and it's going to be longevity here, playing the long game, it's not going to last. So it's super hard, hey. And it's one of those things I suggest instead of men out there, that men or women especially, it's like be honest, hey, be honest. Like the amount of lies and stuff that you tell on it is crazy. Like the things that you tell yourself when you're smoking ice and doing those drugs, it's oh man, it's like you look back, far out, you're just lying for your teeth, you ruin relationships, you say whatever you had to say just to get the answer or get whatever it is that you wanted. Really, you're very manipulative mindset at that time. So yeah, it was hard. But, we're here now.
Yeah, and mate, to be honest, I can resonate with a lot of that with my own strugglings, and I think when you look at the core of lies, and I judged a lot of people, and I think society as a whole judges a lot of people for lying, and I get it. And I think when you understand what's at the core of lying, you're somewhat a bit more empathetic, and that doesn't give it, that doesn't validate it by any means, but I think there's a level of understanding when you look at it, and it can be on a small scale or it can be on a large scale. I mean, being in the fitness industry for 16 years, people lie all the time about what they eat and don't eat. And at the core of it, which is really important for people to understand, at the core of it's often a level of guilt, shame, judgment, embarrassment, whatever it may be. So when you look at it that way, it takes a bit of the sting out of what, the judgment that you're making. And again, when people are addicts on whatever level that is, alcoholism, drugs, sex, porn, gambling, there's often lying. And I just think that if people understood it a little bit better, then there'd be a little bit less judgment around it. Like I'm guessing that's kind of, at the core of you lying when you, had an ice problem, I'm guessing was a level of like shame or guilt or fear or judgment.
Yeah.
Something along those
definitely.
lines.
There's a lot of fear and judgment from everyone as well, and I hit it a lot. I hit it really well. Was another big thing that I was good at. I guess when I think about it now, like I said this before, I feel like I was just a little boy, hey. Like I was a little confused boy, and like I don't mean that to bring myself down at all, but that's the honest truth. Like I was this young guy that just had no idea, and just poor guidance. And I was a little boy trying to be a man at the time, thinking I knew everything. And little did I know shit. And it was, I look back and it was crazy what you're trying to convince yourself that you knew. And for me, I feel like that carried on right up until I was about 23. And I see it today as well. There's a lot of guys that are just showing a level of immaturity that from an age of 16, 17, we just didn't really grow up much after that. It's like you kind of leave school and you keep that same mentality until something bad happens, really. And yeah, it just came a point in like my life where I had to be like, okay, enough is enough. I'm over this shit. And I guess that's what happens with age. You mature, but I feel like I could have done it a lot earlier, a lot less harder lessons. I feel like and that's why I love this work as well, helping them, because I know I can help so many kids that are around that were around my age when I was going through that with the correct guidance, and give them a bit of understanding of what's going on at them. Because when I was in that state, I didn't have no idea. I had no one to ask. I had no need to. Well, I thought I had no one, but there was actually the right thing. I just didn't know how to approach anyone in the right manner. But yeah, it was a very confusing time as a young man. That's for sure. Trying to go through that phase of my
Yeah.
life.
What was it? And mate, to be honest, it's so common that for a lot of us, it's almost like we had the different levels of warning signs. You know, it's like we get the little whisper, and then we get the like slap, and if you don't make change or you don't wake up in those moments, and the steam train comes through and wipes you out, and that's often, you know, the wake up call that really is, you know, the catalyst for change. What did it take for you to admit that you had a problem, you know, albeit addiction, and for you to step into that? And if you look back now in hindsight, what was the resistance to it? Was it lack of awareness? Was it ego? Was it pride? Was it a combination of all of the above? What was the resistance to actually just going, I am an addict and I've got a problem?
I guess there's two kind of moments. One was about 3 years ago. That was, I guess this happened in two phases. So one about 3 years ago where I it was my fourth serious relationship. And obviously it ended. It ended not on not good terms. It wasn't well. And like I had a moment. I still remember the moment. I was sitting at the back stairs and I was sitting having a coffee, and I was like, this is the same problem with every woman that I've been with, had a relationship with. They all said the same thing. We all broke up. We broke up because of the exact things. And I was like, look, all four of these women can't be wrong. And it was just that moment where it was just like, okay. And it was just that, I was like, I can't run. I was like, you can't run. I was like, I'm stubborn and I'm ignorant, but I cannot ignore the fact that they are right and I'm wrong, and couldn't play this manipulative game that I was playing. And I was blaming them, saying, okay, you're the problem, or you're crazy, or whatever it was. So that was a pivotal moment, that one. And I guess the resistance there was I was scared to change. I was scared to change as a man, leaning into things like your vulnerability, open up to your communication. It was a hard thing for me to sit there and, I guess, tell a woman how I felt, or be truly vulnerable and open up how I was feeling. So that's why it took me four failed relationships to actually change, because I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to lean into the uncomfortable things. And not that, I may not have not wanted to, but I think it was more of I didn't have the right tools to, I guess, navigate a conversation on how, never been taught how to be vulnerable, really. Not being taught, but I'd never seen it really. I'd never been in any spaces where I'd seen men doing it a great deal. So that was for me that was a really pivotal moment. And then I guess like going back about another 4 years before that, when it was kind of like in a really hard spot, when I had that moment where I had to, I guess, change and get off the drugs, was I actually had an incident. And I'll tell you the resistance around the alcohol and the drugs and alcohol as well. But I had an incident, so these guys anyway, I don't know what happened. Who knows? Like when you're in that state, these guys, they wanted to hurt me, and we had a few altercations and stuff like that. And they ended up chasing me in this car, and I was in my car, and it was like a big altercation. Like we were all driving around town. I was out of my mind, they were out of their mind as well, and they were chasing me around the car. And I ended up just getting home. And like, what the hell? Like, what are you doing? I remember just shaking my head, and I was like, this isn't you. Like, this is not what you should be doing. And that was a real time where I was like, shit, something's got to change. Something's got to change. We can't keep doing this. This is not okay. And so, yeah, that was a moment and change there. And then I feel like, I guess what resistance I had to like weaning myself off that drugs and alcohol. Like, the drugs was a problem, ice and stuff like that in the party scene, but it wasn't. I feel like now it was actually the socializing that was quite addictive. It was just the drugs and alcohol that actually came with it. So that was kind of the hard thing to quit for me, and I think that's where a lot of resistance came because I wanted to hang out with friends, but in those environments, that's all there was drugs and alcohol, and it was quite hard for me to change while that was around. So there's a lot of resistance there. It's like, do I be a loner and do I just hang out by myself? Or do I go hang out in those environments and test out my willpower? And that was that was quite hard for me. That was a really, really difficult time, I feel now, because I put myself to a level of isolation that was, it was super hard, hey?
Mate, that would be hard. I mean, we're born to kind of be around people. So to be put in a position where it's either staying in an environment which gives us that sense of connection and community, albeit unhealthy, or go it alone when you kind of transition. Mate, that's a real big reason why a lot of people stay stuck in friendships and circles that don't serve them anymore, because to let go of that into the unknown is really challenging. And you and I spoke when we were on your podcast about that. Like, you've got so many of the people that come to us in different ways, not feeling connected, but not through being on their own, but just being in circles that don't kind of support where they're at anymore. And that jump's hard. Like, that's a really hard jump. So I can understand why a lot of people will continue to play small or continue to not live to their fullest because they're staying in circles that are familiar. And if for those listening, if you know how our brain works, it likes what's familiar, even if it's not good for us. So to stay in that unhealthy, toxic relationship, friendship groups, whatever it may be, is safer for us than it is to step into the unknown, albeit, with an intention for something kind of healthier and to go to a higher level. So, mate, it's interesting. I think, for whatever reason, us blokes have got a lot to question when it comes. Where definitely weren't working in the relationship, and it gets to the point where you're like, fuck, who's the common denominator? Do you know what I mean? And that's us. So if there's a common thread coming up in relationships, and I've done the same thing as you, and I don't know what point you got to, but I was like, continuously passing it off as their problem. And then, at one point in my last relationship, I was like, fuck, like, this has come up 3 times now. It's not their problem. It isn't their problem that, I have these patterns that have come up in 3 relationships and played a big part in why we broke up. That's my shit,
Yeah.
I'm the common denominator.
It's so crazy. Like, when you now obviously having the education and understanding that you do now, when you look back at it, it's like you look at it like, oh shit, how was I trying to get away with that stuff? And that was for me as well. Like, and I was speaking to, I guess, my relationships as well. That was the next level. That was the next hurdle that I had to overcome after addiction. Coming out of addiction, I had a lot of problems leading into this as well. And worked through my addiction, and then I pretty much had these traits in my relationships as well. And I guess now, obviously, I've worked through all those, and even my exes now, like, we have a really solid relationship. Now I've even had them on my podcast, and we've had open discussions about everything that we did and what I did and what I didn't do as a partner, and how I didn't hold up my end of the bargain to give people an understanding, especially for guys. So many guys are just in relationships, and I see them just jumping from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So I'm like, it's and I say this now with you know, I don't want to have another relationship after the next one. You know, that's the kind of, you know, although I didn't like going through the ones that I had, it was unfortunate, but you know, I'm grateful for them as well because it taught me the lessons now, and I really truly know how to, you know, be harder now the bad ones. But yeah, it's man, if you're, I see guys burning through a lot of relationships, and I'm like, man, sooner or later you got to stop the bullshit and come to a stop because you know, you burn out. It's hard. It's hard, man, and you can't keep blaming the women forever. Can't, no, I'm not saying that women don't do nothing bad, but I'm saying, yeah, there's a lot of guys not taking ownership of what they're doing in a relationship. Well, so that was what I was a little boy. I was trying to solve problems. I wasn't communicating well. Uh, yeah, I was just dishonest. I was just talking shit. I was just, yeah, all those things just accumulate. And I think the longest relationship I had was a year and a half, 2 years. And then she hung in there. I gave her a gold medal just for hanging in there with me through that time. So yeah, and it was just, yeah, they just fed up with my bullshit. That's it. And I just wasn't ready to mature and ready to grow up at the time.
I think the other thing that's really, and I don't know how you feel about relationships now, having recognized some of my patterns that definitely weren't serving me. I've I'm in a very comfortable place where I'm happy to kind of tap out for the time being when it comes to relationships. Similar to you, I guess, in a roundabout way, where you just don't want to go through the stuff that you've been through. And obviously, you know, breakups are heartbreaking in themselves. But, you
Mm.
know, and I think a lot of blokes, if they really were honest with themselves, could probably go, fuck, I need to like tap out and sort out my shit for a bit and really sort it out.
Yeah,
And then also, you know, look at what you attract, you know, in terms of what you're
yeah,
drawing in from a female point of view. And that tells a really interesting story as well, and one that
yeah.
I've joined a lot of dots backwards to kind of help me go forwards. But where's your head at around relationships, knowing that you've had some patterns that haven't necessarily served you? Is it a case of, you know, you want that space to work on your stuff? Is it a case of the right person will support you in working through that? Is it, you know, something else?
No, yeah, no, definitely. I was speaking to this. So I guess out of my Sherry was one of my old exes, and after that point, like when I split with her, I said, hey, look, you know, I need to go work on my shit. And this is a conversation I had with her. And I said, look, I'm not going to drag you through it with me. I said, look, you need to give me a few months. I don't know how long this is going to take. This could take, you know, a year or whatever, and we'll see what happens at the end of it. But pretty much had that conversation with her and said, we need to go through this. Um, and that was a couple of years ago now. And obviously, I've been working on myself ever since. And look, now I feel like because I rushed into relationships, I used to. Um, I'm a lot clearer on what I want now. I'm a lot clearer on what I want. So it's changed it dramatically. So I'm very cautious of who I let into my space now, and who I have around me. Although I guess speaking in a company sense, I don't indulge in that as much as I used to. I've been, I guess, if this is 2020 has been a bit of a definitely a more lonely year for me in that section, but it's been a good learning curve on the people that I have around me are the ones that I really value, and I'm quite cautious of giving all that space and involved. So I'm just after quality at these days. And, you know, if they're not vibing with me, they're not vibing with me. It's not you know, I don't hate anyone or anything like that, but I'm just pretty clear these days. Whatever, but it's not, you know, I don't waste my energy and I don't give my attention to, you know, every woman that comes past. It's just like souls, just one at a time. That's it. And give
Yeah,
your energy and time to one at a time, because as men, you can get quite confused in it. And I'm very open about this as well. As many, you know, for me in my past, like, you know, men would be talking to multiple women at a time. And, you know, I was one of them as well. And it was just because, you're always looking over the hill, always looking over the hill. What's over there? What's next? And it doesn't matter. Like, you could always find something better, I feel, if you're looking. If you're looking. And that's where I guess a lot of men get caught in that trap. Know what you want and then go look for it. And but that's, and then on the hindsight, I feel like, look, someone may not have everything they want and desire, but do they have the ability to grow into that as well? I feel like even a lot of people are like, oh, I want everything. They've got to have all the dots. You know, but for me, like, look, they may not have everything that's perfect, but can they grow into, you know, everything that I would like someone to grow, you know, can we grow together? So that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's what I'm
Has
actually.
you go?
Oh yeah, I had a guy, Manuel Teledizio is a guy. I know I did a podcast with him, and I asked him a scenario, and it's like, I asked him, what does love mean to him? And he explained it to me in a way that I've never been really explained to. It's like, he explained it, it's like the journey. It's like many people come together and they fall in love and they stay in love, they stay in that one spot. And no, he explained it's like you cross paths and you meet someone in life and you get on the same path and you travel. You're in love and you go and travel that journey together. As when people meet each other and they stop and then they meet there and that's it. And then they don't grow. So I guess for me, and that's my perception of love too, is like when two people cross one another's path and then they join and then they travel that, you know, go through life in love, traveling, growing. And yeah, I guess that's what I'm looking for these days. Something to grow through my journey.
Yeah, mate. That's high on my list of interest in what I'm seeking from a partner. Has that changed a lot for you over the last couple of years as you've evolved? I know, you know, I must have posted it last week around something along the lines of, you know, you've grown when, you know, you have no interest in your ex or something along the lines of that. But do you look at, you know, who you may have dated previously or how you may have seen relationships and question now if that's what you want, what you're looking for in a relationship, where you want to go with a relationship?
Yeah, it's been I'm pretty clear. I'm not pretty clear. I'm clear on what I want. And I know it. Now I know it because it hasn't come across me yet. It hasn't come across me as yet. But, oh, it's hard to find, and you know, I don't think that I'll just meet someone and just be like willy nilly. I think it's just something that I'll come across someone and through that be a bit of a journey. Well, I would say, um, but I guess as far as it's changed, it has changed. Um, like for me, I guess one of the highest values, like I feel like, and this is like I think I guess the approach in women has changed. Um, I feel like I only ever used to go for little girls in a matter of a sense, like immature little girls, like hadn't grown up yet, and I was just a little boy that hadn't really matured yet. And as we're now, if I see a woman, a straight woman, knows who she is, she's a straight boss, I'm like, that was a woman that I used to avoid because I didn't know who I was. As we're now, that's attractive to me. I'm attracted to that. I see that and I want that. As where it would be something I would deter, like I would get you know what I mean? Like you meet a girl, you meet a straight woman, and she's certain of herself. She's she knows who she is. She's done the work, and she's certain. Like those kind of women scare me. I would never go for that ever because I didn't know she would have it over me, as my ego wouldn't allow me to be in that space because I wouldn't be able to, you know, meet her on a level. She would be up here, and I would be down here, all kinds of spaces. But now that's what I want because I want someone to be like an equal apart. And so that's what I know that's what I seek these days. So it's changed in that way. I'm going from, you know, immature little party girls don't know what they want to do and they just want to go out and fuck around and stuff like that, to I want a woman that knows what she wants, knows who she is, And she's getting things, she's going for. So
Mate,
yeah, that's what I'm after.
I resonate with a lot of what was just said. Resonate with a lot of it. Like what drew you to men's medicine? Obviously, you've spoken about your kind of struggles with addictions, and even to a certain degree, the struggle and the transition from what was a fairly toxic environment to the unknown in terms of just having to break away from, a pretty rough crowd. What drew you to men's medicine, and what, when you look at everything that men's medicine is, what's the real fire in it for you? What element of it? There may be a couple of elements, a few elements, like what's the elements that really, or even the values that really draw that fire in you?
Yeah, it's like it's just it's what we've been saying lately. It's like be the change, we are the change. It's like being the change and teaching people that they have the change. I've always just been passionate about, look, just cutting the shit and just getting to it. And I feel like being in the men's medicine community and the environment, like when we kicked off, it was just, that's what it was about. We just were like, look, we're just going to go do it. We're going to do it. Like, we always teach people and preach, like, you don't have to be anyone special. Like any and every man has something that they can help another man. And I feel like that's where a lot of people go, I guess, where men go into shells because they're like, oh, just stick to each other, stick to ourselves and not help each other. But I'm like, look, you can help another man. You can help another man. And I guess men's medicine was giving men the basic tools to be able to do that, to be able to help each other, help your community, be that man now. And that's what it was. It's the love for it to be self-sufficient and teaching men the tools and just things that I never got taught. And just like the change, like men come into a community or come to an event, and at the start of the day they may look a bit, worried or rough, and what's going to happen, and then at the end they just leave a smile on their face. They want a hug, and like for me, that's all I need. That is all I need. That is why I love it so much, because that's that sense of fulfillment. I get in my car and I cruise home the day. I'm like, head out the window. I'm like, I did some shit today. I was like, I did some shit today. Music player, and I'm like, yep, we laid it down. And that's always the best feeling. It's always the best feeling. You get to be like, change. We really shifted those men today. I know they're going home, better men.
Yeah.
That's it for me. That's all I need. I'm like, that's it. It's like, I got to help some guys today. Really help them. So that's it, man.
That's good. What's your medicine like? I love the name men's medicine, but what in particular, what's your medicine? What brings out the best in you, in terms of showing up as the best version of you? I think from, some of the chat that we've had, being in a position of power and influence is really important, from a leadership point of view, to lead by example. And often it kind of actually helps you teacher, because in it as a teacher. But what's your medicine that helps you be the best version of you?
Like the thing that keeps me on track the most, you say? Yeah, for
Yeah.
me, it's like, it's my structure. It's my structure. Structure's everything for me. I'm like, my time is obviously one of my most valuable. It's one of my most valuable things. And understanding and knowing where it lies is so important to me. So, like for me, it's about routines and structure. If you have a good routine and a good structure, it's like and you do that over years and years, that consistency pays. I love consistency because consistency pays, and I'm a product of consistency, and it may not be doing all of the things at once. You might just do a couple of things good each day. routine, with structure, daily habits, and you do that over a couple of years, and then you just add a couple of things as you get better and better, and you take out some things as you get, really good at them, and just keep swapping them out, and just make good habits and routines. It just pays. Like, you will just hit another level. Like, you'll get to a stage where years of accumulation, consistency, working on habits and routine and structure, it just pays dividends. So that's I guess my strongest medicine. That's what I like to teach a lot of space as well. Um, like, what are you doing with your time? Like, in this world, we're in a gifted time. Like, from the moment, that's all we have. We have time with each other. So it's like understanding where it lies, utilize it correctly, and also be in this present moment. Be present as well. Don't always be trying to think too far ahead or too far back. Because if you're living in the past and the present, you're living in the future and the past, you're not living in the present. So I always teach men that, like, being in this moment right now is so important. That's why, and people ask me why I get a smile on my face too. Because I'm just like, man, right now is a good day. Even when it's shit, oh well, about it down. I'm like, oh, I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
I'm going to kick back and get my popcorn and watch it. That's just it. It's just like, yeah, structure. And the thing is too, like, as much as I love structure, I love throwing it out as well. Like, I'm such a spontaneous man. I'll just go willy-nilly and go do whatever as well. But when it's time to get busy and it's time to get work, man, I'm all go. I'm all systems go. And we'll get that structure happen, because that's where we get the results from. That structure and building self-accountability is like one of the things a lot of men I speak to. As men, we tend to outsource our accountability. It's one of the biggest things I see. Hey, bro, can you keep me accountable for this? Hey, can you touch me up on this? Can you let me know about this? Blah blah blah. Even like with partners. Hey, babe, can you remind me to do this? Hey, can you do this? You can't really yourself. That's one of the biggest things that I preach. Don't, because if you outsource your accountability, you're only as good as the people you outsource it to. And some days they may not always be there. You're relying on them. So building your own self-accountability plan to me is crucial.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously, part of the work that we do is very much around kind of vulnerability and keeping it real, which I think, many people struggle with. And I think a lot of people struggle in the social media world of keeping things real and being transparent with what's working and what's not. And if, the accountability and the systems and the structure are, what you do well, what's something that you find a bit of a challenge, whether it's a new thing, something that you've always kind of struggled with? What's at the other end of the scale for you?
Yeah, man, it's my reading, my writing. So, I'm not saying that I can't, but I can't read or write properly. I left school not knowing how to read and write correctly. I guess now it's something that I work on quite a bit. And I've failed at this so many times. Like, I'll give a couple of examples. Like, my podcast page, like pages that I have, I would write quotes up, like big bold letters, and the spelling would be wrong. And so many people, and people that know me and love me, like, hey, please stop that wrong. And this would go on forever, and it's one of those things that I've learned to live with, but I've learned to not let it ever bother me and not let me get across what I need to say. Like, I used to have a lot of fear, like I can't read or spell properly. Like, even at school, I would read something, and like, someone would say, hey, read this out for me, and I'd read it. I wouldn't read it word for word. I would read through it, and pick up what I had, and then I would freestyle. And I could freestyle the shit out of it. And the teachers would be like, that's good, Luke, but that's not what's written on the paper. I'm like, it's close enough. I did a test one day in exam, thing in English, and I freestyled the whole lot, got up and freestyled it. And I got like, she would have given me an A, but she said she'd give me a B because I had no paper, but just freestyle. I could always do that, but I couldn't, I couldn't, yeah, like, at school I didn't really learn well. I used to go get my assignments from the printer. People at school used to print the assignments out, and sometimes they would print the wrong, they'd print too many copies out and stuff. I would go get I would sift through the paper and then find people's assignments and use those assignments as my assignments. So that's how I got through school. Yeah, on the back end of all this, that's something I've really struggled with is my reading and writing literacy skills is being poor, but I can speak. Definitely get better at speaking as well. But yeah, that's something. But like I said, I don't let it bother me. Like, I'm just going to run with it, spell things wrong. I can't read that well, but I'll give it a crack. That's definitely something I struggle with. It's probably one of the biggest things. And it's one of those hurdles that I'm trying to get past because I know reading books is such an important aspect. And I want to learn, I want to educate myself. So they're really leaning into reading more books. It's one of those things that I really want to
try. Mate, with what you already know, to add that skill in terms of reading books will be a really a great asset when and if the time's right, mate. So I love that. Rounding this out, because Instagram does cut me off after an hour, whether I like it or not. But one of the real themes with the work we've been doing recently, we got asked this on an interview last week, was what can women do to support blokes? And obviously with men's medicine, you guys know how to support blokes and what to do. I think one of the challenges for many, and this obviously definitely isn't exclusive to men in any way, but a lot of blokes, who are so heavily attached from an identity point of view to their career, their income, those type of things have really hit some rock bottoms this year in knowing who they are without their career. If work's been halted, if they've lost their jobs, whatever that may be, it's really affected them, and obviously it's affected women as well, and in so many other ways. Having spent plenty of time with men now, what do you think are 3 ways that, whether it's their partner, sister, mum, 3 really good ways to support guys in that position?
I know, I got the answer already. I'll kick it off with a short story. So I've had this conversation just recently in the last couple of weeks with one of my ex-partners. She's having some trouble with one of the guys that she's seeing, and she rings me for advice. Obviously, I've got the men, be good advice to give her for her. And for me, like, if any woman out there is having trouble with her partner, like, this is the biggest thing I've come across anyway, just in my learnings. It's, a lot of women tend to call their men out. F you, you did this, you did that, not good enough, etc., etc. So for me, it's not about calling them out, it's about calling them forwards, because most men will rise to the occasion. But if you call them out, you're like, oh, you're shit boyfriend, you're done, whatever, blah, blah, blah. However that looks for you, just calling them out. They're usually going to throw up the walls straight away. Yep, whatever, see ya, don't talk to me, not done, arms crossed, and they're going to be like this. No, they're going to go sit, they're going to be like, no, I want to get this off. But if you call them forwards, hey, darling, look, X, Y, Z, I think you could be much better. I think you could do much better. I know you've got it in you. There's a good man here. When I met you, we were doing all this X, Y, Z. I think that you could work better, and I'm here to support you. Instead of calling them out, call them forwards. That's definitely one of my biggest words of advice, because men will just throw up the wall straight away. No communication, cut you off, see you later, bye, and then nil. Like, women would have had it before. They had an argument with men that she has a go at him, and then he's just like, they will get the silent treatment straight away. I know there's probably a couple of women on here throwing love arts. Yeah, I've got that happen to me. and that's what he'll do. he'll tend to run. They'll go into flight, calling the man out, especially if it's a guy that's kind of running and not facing, like squaring off with a lot of his bullshit. He may not have the tools and stuff to operate and be able to navigate through it. As soon as you call him out, he's going to go on flight, and he's not going to forwards. Call him forwards, yeah, definitely. It's a much better approach. That's tip number one. Oh. Tip number two, space. I feel like men need space. Men need space. And yeah, we'll just leave that man space. Give him a bit of space. Don't get in this shit and just be like, request answers out of him straight away. But that works. Second one, create an environment and open conversations that allow them to be vulnerable. And some people may think that, okay, like how does that look? How do I get my man to be vulnerable? I guess sometimes it might have to go first. As a woman, sometimes there's a lot of pressure on men. You need to be the that are like, but sometimes that's not going to be the case. You might have to go first as a woman, be vulnerable. Men, and don't call them out on it. Call them forwards on it. They come and tell me what's going on. We don't have to hide it here. It's okay. It's safe. Make them feel safe as well. Because I guess a lot of men always, their job is to make them feel safe in all aspects and areas of life. But when it comes to opening up, the women may not be so, comfortable and accountable to make them feel safe to open up as well. So I guess creating that space to build them, help them feel vulnerable. That's my advice. That's my 3 top tips.
Mate, love it. And yeah, I completely agree. The piece around making them feel safe is obviously dialogue that's used often when it comes to women, and that's part of our role as the protector, the provider, the masculine. And I completely think that's, as high and important, that trust and safe piece, from the masculine, the other way. But I think, you make a really good point around, I guess, as a rule of thumb, most blokes feel kind of small and probably inferior when it comes to, their emotional intelligence in relation to women. So to make them feel safe in that space helps them kind of come forward and step into that space. So I love that, big fella. Mates, I'm about to get cut from the gram.
That's all good.
But want to thank you for coming on, and we can finally, with our little border pass, get across to the Goldie. So I don't know what events you've got coming.
I've got space here. So ready to go.
Perfect. I don't know, and I don't even know what events you've got coming up over the next couple of months. But as I said when I was on your podcast, super keen to see what you guys are all about and experience it firsthand. So looking forward to jumping over the border.
Definitely, brother. I appreciate the time tonight as well. Thank you very much. Sending my love.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
We'll see you next
See you
Monday.
guys. Catch you later.